Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, Timi Priye Silva, Your Excellency, my good friend, Gabriel Obang for Equatorial Guinea, Excellencies here present, Captains of Industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, let me profusely thank you for inviting me to make a few remarks. The owner of the policy platform, His Excellency, Timi Priye Silva, has already done a general overview, so I'm probably going to hide under his canopy. Let me start by saying that, just for anecdotes, probably about 15 years ago, if not more, Timi, you probably remind me of that. When I was working for ExxonMobil as an executive director, Timi Priye was working with Royal Majesty Edmond Dakoro, the special advisor. And the problems that I would have with ExxonMobil, I will actually come to his desk to try and find solutions on those. And then fast track, a couple of years later, I became Minister of State. And of course, he became governor. And then today, we're transiting. So transition has actually started a long time ago, in some ways. I was talking on the concept of transition. First, let me also say a very big thank you to all of you who put this together every year. It's amazing how well it's gone over the last 5 years and how much momentum is gathered over the last 2 years. And I urge you to continue in that spirit. The whole idea is to have, like I said when it was first starting, an OTC type event that eclipses and involves the whole of Africa. And that's where we should be going. And I'm happy that His Excellency is giving a lot of energy and boost to that. Thank you very much. I was, a few weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago, I was at the burial of a brother-in-law of mine. And my granddaughter, who had attended it with me, saw a card that said, "Transiting to Glory." And she said, she came to ask me, "So are we celebrating?" I said, well, somehow. I said, what's it somehow? You're either celebrating, you're not celebrating. And I said, yes, we're celebrating that he's gone to heaven, God is taking him there. He said, so why are people just crying when you're celebrating? I said, because you also weep when you lose somebody. We all want to hold on to the basics. We don't want to go to the new platform. And so she asked, so what transportation is going to transit him to the place? And I said, well, he said, is it a bus? Is it a train? I said, no, this is one of those transitions that God just calls you and you just go. So you guys didn't even plan for the transportation? So it begets what we are doing today, which is that transition is important, but sometimes it is frightening. It is frightening to see you demur away from oil that we're all used to, that has provided our resource and bloodline for so many years, for so many decades. And then now the whole world is saying, no, you've got to begin to look for cleaner environment. So you're frightened on one hand, and you're basically possessive on the other hand, but it's like the minister said, it's an inevitable journey. And we've got to begin to plan for that journey and plan for it very seriously. So with that, I think that I would, in my very perfunctory remarks, which are not very important, I have 10 things to throw to the panel as they look at this today. I didn't bother to make a prepared speech or anything. I'm not used to doing that much. Because when you look at the panel, they are full of heavyweights. If they can't find a solution to our transition journey, then they will have to answer to my granddaughter on what vehicle is taking us there. But the first thing is that we must hold on to the base. We must protect the base. Protecting the base means that for oil production, it is absolutely important that we look at it again. We've done that for 30, 40 years. Are we really doing it at the best way it should be? It is important that if we have very limited time to bleed this resource, that we speed up whatever programs we have to ensure that we take advantage of good oil prices that are coming up, low oil prices, whatever it is, but we have to bleed that product before everybody takes a bow out. We've had like Farouk would say, we've had the unfortunate incidences of going through wood transition, coal transition, oil transition. Most times Africa arrives at the table when the wagon is already off the train. So it is absolutely important that these next 10 years, we sit down and say, how do we fast track oil production to sort of level that we can bleed it as much as we can. The second, of course, is value added. We have tended to export in perpetuity. It is now time to actually add value. And so I'm very glad with the refining policies that His Excellency is pushing. Dangote Refinery comes up sometime, I understand, third quarter of this year. A few refineries, ISACs and the rest of them are already doing their trains 1 and train 2. A lot of the modular refineries are beginning to kick, but the big elephant in the room, which is Melekiare's team, will have to work to see how we can reactivate all the other refineries. Because unless we stop selling crude for crude and begin to actually apply crude for value, we're going to still be left not getting the very best out of it. So that's a very major transition work that needs to be done. The third, of course, is gas. And the minister mentioned very profoundly yesterday a decade of gas, and I think that is absolutely apt. We need to, over the next 10 years, really take gas and take gas very seriously. We need to look at our policies, we need to look at our incentives, we need to look at our tax regimes. We need to look at one big elephant, which is the fourth point I have to make, which is funding. Funding. The reason we haven't grown as well as we should is that our access to funding usually is limited. In our poll, I think we tried to do the 1 billion mark of funding for African countries, but that's nothing really compared to the sort of resource that is required to develop this field. So one of the works I'm sure His Excellency will be looking at is how do we gather people of like minds, global and local, to begin to put together a serious funding stream. And even if it means dipping our hands into the federal government purses to create those necessary funding that is essential for Millie and the rest of them to do the sort of trajectory developments that they're looking for, it is important that we find funding. Developing gas is a lot more expensive than developing crude. So we need to actually find those funds. Now, when you take that along with the fact that we must, whilst we focus on gas, not forget that it is not all about gas. There's solar, there is wind. And I think one of the areas where we can at least, unlike our previous historical journeys, get well ahead of everybody is to begin to develop those natural resources that are energy related, where we have economic advantages, superior advantages, and begin to do them well ahead of time. So as we're pushing gas, we need to begin to look at areas of our country that are so blessed with good sunlight, good sunshine for solar, areas of our country where wind is very important, and begin to see how we can begin to move that. But let me say this, gas is basically only a transition product, and we shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't get too comfortable. It took a lot of negotiations in Cape to even put gas as one of the transition products. So over the next 15, 20 years, be sure that the developed world is going to be also trying to move out of gas. So it is important that we're well ahead in terms of solar, well ahead in terms of wind, well ahead in terms of technology-driven energy items. Fifth is the bandwagon of exits. Everywhere you look, the big boys are selling. And they couch it and say to us, it's because we want to focus on the whole energy dynamics. Yeah, I hear that. But the truth is something clearly is wrong somewhere. And I think we need to obviously have that conversation in terms of why are you all exiting in a dove. I can understand one exit or two exits, but all the multinationals taking a work on selling assets. Fantastic opportunities for Nigerians, don't get me wrong. But it is important because ultimately you still need that funding to deal with the gas. So we need to have that very base relationship discussion to say, is there something we're doing wrong? Is there something we can do better? How do we get you, even if you're not doing crude, to begin to focus heavily on gas? So that is important. PIA is a major, huge success of the Honorable Minister, and I congratulate you because this is 2 or 3 decades of work that we just couldn't get past the finish line, where he got it done. And that is, I think we should give him a round of applause for that. Together with the work done on marginal fields, huge achievements. Now, but it is. 3 years ago, I did a book called, I think it was a petroleum industry bill, getting to yes. And I think I'm getting ready now to do one of Petroleum Industry Act. What needs to be done? The difficulty the minister is going to have is that just as it's caused this huge success, it's almost on the working table to begin to say what are the areas where we need to patch up and do a lot more work to get PIA to sort of dreams that you had when you did that. But we must not forget to celebrate that huge milestone because it's something that is eroded us for so long. So huge congratulations. But now we need to see how we tie fiscals, how we tie other situations, to all the policies and making sure that PIA actually delivers, especially on the institutional models and framing institutions properly. The Nigerian can-do spirit is key. That's item number 7. And the way we've responded to a lot of the block sales shows that if you let Nigerians exhibit the entrepreneurial skills, there's nowhere they cannot go. They will find the money, they will find the solutions, they will find the skills. They're huge. And that is important. But it's also important that we do not get into almost a cannibalistic, hands-holding. It is us and us alone. It is absolutely important. One of the things that has done well in this country is opening the field to Nigerians. But then you have models where people have tons and tons of blocks. One person has 10 or 15 blocks, doesn't develop them, just keeps packing them like certificates of occupancy. The time has come when we need to look at that again and say, if you've not really done this, what does the law say? Take it out and give it to the next person. But there are lots of Nigerians looking for opportunities for development. And so it's very, very key that we do this. 9th point, I think, is the issue of equity and fairness. How do we distribute acreages? Is it going around in a way that everybody feels that they really have justice happening here? What of resource allocation? It will never go away. It will always be there. How do we deal with all this in a period of transition? Because unless you deal with those issues, the same lands that you want to go in to do transition into gas is going to create the same problems that you had in producing oil. So it's very important that we get back to those areas. Finally, the 10th point will be timeliness. We've booked in 2060 as a carbon emission exit year. Fantastic, a lot of time. But our experience obviously shows that I won't fix 2060 for Africa. We need to begin to plan for about 2040 or 2045. We need to be ahead of the pack to be able to sit on that table in 2060. So issues of abandonment, issues of cleanup, issues of funding, issues of clarity of where we're going for the other externalities in production have got to be very, very clear. I think these are some of the issues that I see today, and I'm happy that the panel that is coming immediately now has all the experience, all the wherewithal, and they're backed by somebody who absolutely believes in what needs to be done in the industry, the Honorable Minister, and I'm sure that today you'll find solutions, and then you follow that with policy and execution. Thank you very much for letting me speak.